Hello, my name is Austin Habish, the founder of Think Catholic, and you're listening to the Summa Theologiae podcast, where we study St. Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologiae in a way simple and insightful for anyone to understand. The Summa Theologiae podcast is brought to you by Think Catholic. Taking 2 questions of the Summa a day, we'll seek to summarize St. Thomas's responses, discovering the brilliance of Aquinas. And his Catholic faith is day 299. So let's get started. We're covering today questions 83 and 84 of the supplement to the Summa. That is, of the subtlety of the bodies of the blessed and of the agility of the bodies of the blessed. The translation that I always use in these podcasts is the one generously provided to me by Ave Maria Press, the 5-volume set translated by the fathers of the English Dominican province, which you can now get at a discounted price from Ave Maria Press's site by typing in the code SUMMA10. And so here we go. Article 1, whether subtlety is a property of the glorified body. What do we mean by subtlety? First of all, Aquinas tells us subtlety takes its name from the power to penetrate. In this way, we could say that the mind is subtle, since it pierces to the depth of a thing's intelligible form or nature. And another way, we could also say something incredibly minuscule, which is then able to pass in between things, is subtle as well. The first thing we can say regarding subtlety when it comes to the human body is that the soul is subtly, i.e. penetrating, all of the matter of the body, making it specifically a human body, and by being the cause of all of its operations, its movements. And because the subtlety of the body is caused by the soul, then the greater the grasp of the body by the soul, the greater the subtlety of the body is going to be. And what that entails practically is what we're going to discuss in the following articles. Article 2, whether by reason of this subtlety a glorified body is able to be in the same place with another body not glorified. Key to keep in mind here that we are asking whether a glorified body can go through or be in the same place of a non-glorified material thing. That's what makes this article distinct from Article 4 a little ways down the road. St. Thomas teaches that since it is characteristic of matter as existing actually to have dimensive quantity, then subtlety of the matter caused via the soul would not be sufficient of itself to permit 2 bodies to occupy the same exact place and yet remain distinct. To quote Aquinas, he writes, it follows that, as Boethius says, we cannot possibly conceive 2 bodies occupying one place, so that this distinction of individuals requires this difference of accidents. Now, subtlety does not deprive the glorified body of its dimensions, wherefore it no ways removes from it the aforesaid necessity of occupying a distinct place from another body. However, by the miraculous power of God, a body can lose its distinction of place from another and yet still remain actually distinct from that other body. To this, St. Thomas says, which we will repeat in the article following this one, but in different words, the subtlety of a glorified body will not enable it to be in the same place together with another body, but it will be possible for it to be together with another body by the operation of the divine power, even as the body of Peter had the power whereby the sick were healed at the passing of Peter's shadow, that's Acts chapter 5, not through any inherent property, but by the power of God. Thus will the divine power make it possible for a glorified body to be in the same place together with another body for the perfection of glory. Article 3, whether it is possible by a miracle for 2 bodies to be in the same place. The answer is yes. And to discuss how that works out, we should quote St. Thomas again at length here. The reason why 2 bodies must needs be in 2 places is that distinction in matter requires distinction in place. Now, this distinct being depends on the essential principles of a thing as on its proximate causes, yet on God as first cause. And since the first cause can preserve a thing in being, though the second causes be done away, therefore by God's power and by that alone, it is possible for an accident to be without a substance, as in the sacrament of the altar, that's the Eucharist. Likewise, by the power of God, and by that alone, it is possible for a body to retain its distinct being from that of another body, although its matter be not distinct as to place from the matter of the other body. So in other words, just like it is impossible naturally for the accidents of bread and wine, its taste, its shape, its color, to exist without a substantial form, its substantial form. Yet divine power can affect this, for God can give existence to accidents even without the usual proximate form. So too, although it is impossible for two bodies to remain distinct as two bodies while being in the one exact place, God can keep such bodies in existence, distinct, and occupying the same space by divine power, which then means it is possible by a miracle for two bodies to be in the same place. And our proof from concrete history of that would be both the virginal birth of Christ and when Christ walked through the doors to meet the apostles. Article 4, whether one glorified body can be in the same place together with another glorified body. St. Thomas says this is possible by divine power, but it is incredibly unfitting and thus will not occur, as he puts it. If two bodies occupy the same place, one is penetrated by the other. But to be penetrated is a mark of imperfection, which will be altogether absent from the glorified bodies. Therefore, it will be impossible for two glorified bodies to be in the same place. But it would be possible by the divine power for two glorified bodies or two non-glorified bodies to be in the same place, even as a glorified body with a non-glorified body. Article 5, whether by the virtue of its subtlety a glorified body will no longer need to be in an equal place. Beginning with a definition of space, place, as Ed Feser, a well-known Catholic philosopher, put it, he wrote in his book, Aristotle's Revenge, space as extended receptacle or container is like that. In concrete reality outside the mind, the receptacle is always filled with material objects. Just as humanness exists in concrete, mind-independent reality only in actual particular human beings, space as extended receptacle is nevertheless real and distinct from material objects and their relations, just as humanness as universal is real and distinct from particular human beings, like Socrates, Plato. So this is what we're talking about when it comes to place, which I think we covered at length in the first volume of the Summa. It is something that is not identical to the things which are in the place, which take up space somewhere, but neither does place or space exist without something in them. Just like humanness does not exist short of in the mind of God without actual humans who possess humanness, the nature of human. Therefore, in looking at our current question, which is whether by virtue of its subtlety a glorified body will no longer need to be in an equal place, our question is, will the place be equal in size to the thing which is taking up that place? St. Thomas says, whatever is in a place occupies a place equal to itself. Now the glorified body will be in a place, therefore it will occupy a place equal to itself. Further, the dimensions of a place and of that which is in that place are the same. Therefore, if the place were larger than that which is in the place, the same thing would be greater and smaller than itself, which is absurd. Article 6, whether the glorified body by reason of its subtlety will be impalpable. What we mean by palpable here is resistant to being pierced, and thereby can feel that which it is resistant to in touching it. Tangible, on the other hand, means capable of being felt. So we feel cold air around our arms, but the air doesn't really resist my arms when I'm swinging my arms through the air. We don't make contact with air with the same resistance as we do in touching the table, for example. The table is palpable. It resists our touch, which is why we feel it. Our present question is whether the glorified body will resist things which press against it, allowing the body to feel those things which are pressing against it. Our author teaches here, according to its nature, the glorified body is palpable, but it is competent for it to be impalpable to a non-glorified body by his supernatural power. Hence Gregory says that our Lord offered his flesh to be handled, which he had brought in through closed doors, so as to afford a complete proof that after his resurrection, his body was unchanged in nature, though changed in glory. In other words, according to subtlety, the glorified body will be palpable, able to be handled and touched, but according to the miraculous power of God, it will be impalpable to non-glorified things, able to pass through them without them acting in a resistant manner against the glorified body. We turn then to question 84 of the agility of the bodies of the blessed, Article 1, whether the glorified bodies will be agile. We are talking about an ease and swiftness and local movement in the glorified body, and on account of the soul, which is not only the principle of being of the human body, but also of its operation. And as the soul acquires greater perfection by the grace of God, we should expect that perfection to overflow into the operations of the body, one of those operations being local movement. Article 2, whether the saints will never use their agility for the purpose of movement. Is this capacity useful to the beatitude of the saints, the glory of God? St. Thomas teaches, it is likely that they will sometimes move according as it pleases them, so that by actually putting into practice that which is in their power, they may show forth the excellence of divine wisdom, and that furthermore their vision may be refreshed by the beauty of the variety of creatures in which God's wisdom will shine forth with great evidence. Article 3, our last article, whether the movement of the saints will be instantaneous. A lot of words here for the interested listener to read if they wish. What Aquinas defends is that motion requires the actualization of a potential, as we defended in the first volume. That means there is no such thing as instantaneous motion. Motion is a process, and therefore can be measured according to some unit of time. So Aquinas holds the following. In local movement, space, movement, time are all divisible. Now the space traversed by a glorified body in motion is divisible. Therefore both the movement and the time are divisible, but an instant is indivisible. Therefore this movement will not be instantaneous. Others also have said with greater probability, they hold that a glorified body moves in time, but that this time is so short as to be imperceptible, and that nevertheless one glorified body can pass through the same space in less time than another, because there is no limit to the divisibility of time, no matter how short a space we may take. Pretty cool to think about. So moving so fast that it seems like an instantaneous change to an observer, and some bodies moving faster than others. And with that, we close another episode. We have just finished covering questions 83 and 84 of the supplement to the Summa, that is, of the subtlety of the bodies of the blessed and of the agility of the bodies of the blessed. My name is Austin Habish with Think Catholic, and I cannot wait to see you tomorrow.